All right,
Okay.
we're live. I'm with Simon Saywood of Analogue Tube Limited. He's the CEO. He makes these things by hand, the Fairchild compressor limiters. How much do yours run, Simon? What's the price?
The stereo versions, which are the ones I think maybe you can see in the background here, they retail for well, in sterling, it's 12,500 in sterling.
In sterling? What do you mean in sterling?
In pounds sterling. So that's
Sterling
how much
pounds.
English
pound,
current.
English money.
Yeah, I'm in America, bro. I've never heard that. Sorry. I have traveled the world in the Navy, but I have never. I didn't know that. Okay. How much is that U.S. dollars? Any idea?
Sorry.
How much is that in U.S. currency? Any idea?
Well, it used to be 90. It's about 19,000, something like that. $19,000.
Okay. And who are buying these? Because I hear a lot of us are complaining about paying for plugins. So who's buying these things? Who has the extra income? Who's out buying these things?
Well, it's an interesting question, really. I mean, I suppose typically the age group, if that's what you're asking, of the people that buy these are sort of, they may be 30 plus. They've got established studios. They've perhaps made their money in the music business, in other ways. I mean, I've sold units to songwriters, for example. I mean, there's a total of 35. Well, in fact, the unit you can see behind me over here is unit number 35. So that's just of the stereo units. So I mean, a lot of them are in Europe. Some of them, I'd say a majority of them are there's a few in commercial, sort of job in commercial studios, but there's also an equal sort of a more than equal number in private studios as well. And they're all people that like all of us, enjoy recording, mixing, and writing music. And for people that haven't got $30,000 to pay for or $35,000 to pay for an original, this makes for an extremely good alternative because it's brand new. It's been built from the ground up. It uses all the original parts. It uses there's been some good advances in passive technology over the last 60 years. I think it's fair to say that makes these units possible. And if you buy an original unit, you are without doubt going to have 60 years of worth of components in it, and who knows what happens to components after 60 years. It's just one of those things, really, I suppose. So that's where these come in, anyway.
Do the old ones? The originals? Do you actually repair those, or have you repaired any?
Well, occasionally I do. Occasionally they come through. I mean, there's a contact that I have who recently bought one from a place in London and bought an original unit. He's not in this country, but he's asked me to have a look at it, and I'm more than happy to have a look at it. In fact, I will quite happily look at these original units. My thing with originals is that I don't like doing too much to them, because what you want to do is replace original parts with original parts, and you don't want to start messing around with it, because so much of this unit is a sort of so much of the parts, so many of the parts in these units are all responsible for the tone and color of these units, that if you start replacing parts or doing something different, it will ultimately change the tone of the unit.
Okay. You said a lot of these people who are buying these, they're in their own personal private studios. I've seen a whole bunch of different colors. I've seen what looks like lime green, blue, red, gold. You do all of that? Is that all?
That's it. Yes, we do. I suppose any manufacturer will tell you that they can't do it unless they've got the entire sort of CNC machining available to them. That certain parts, for instance, the chassis that you refer to, the color and the anodizing, are subcontracted out to other manufacturers to do. I mean, for Analogue Tube, for example, I can't handle all the machining because I don't have the space. So I subcontract the chassis, for example. I'll subcontract them out to be CNC drilled, to be machined, and then I'll send them off to be anodized and painted and engraved, and then they'll come back. It's a fairly lengthy process. And sure, if you've got the capacity to, to have a machine shop, then obviously that would be great, and certainly cut costs down to a degree as well. But we can't all do that. And for Analogue Tube, my sort of engineering skills here are to do with putting these units together. And if there are any requirements, like people need certain colors, they need certain infills for the engraving, or they need stuff anodized, I just simply send it off. And I use there's a couple of manufacturers that I use over here that are really, really good, and they know me, and I know them, and we get on quite well, and I just put business their way, and that's just how it works. And I generally try, again, as any manufacturer will tell you, quantity is key to this. So if you get one done, you really should be getting 10 done, because that will cut down your costs ultimately. So that's what I try and do. So the ones that are anodized are a little bit different, because not everybody likes lime green, or not everybody likes gold. So they are done as sort of straight one-off custom units. I mean, the green ones I'm doing at the moment, and I'll show you a bit later, I had a one-off. Those were done as a one-off. However, the gold ones, which were exhibited at last year's ATIS show in New York, were done as a pair. So they were stereo units, and I had 2 lots made. So one went to the customer, and I've kept another one back here, which I'm going to be releasing later on this year.
How many people are building these in your shop?
Me. That's it. There's no one. That's it. I quite literally, I am the sort of chief bottle washer here. So there's no. I used to occasionally, actually. I used to. I have over the company started in 2008, and I have employed over the years 2 or 3 people. But it's a very difficult product to build, because even though it's simple in operation, you need to be quite focused when you put it together. You can make a lot of mistakes, and it just all adds to the time. So my feeling was it's just easier and cheaper and better for me just to make them. So and I can make them in my sleep. So pretty much. So that's it really.
So if you want them done right, do them yourself. Gotcha.
Well, if I was a bigger company, and I suppose I'm trying to expand the company at the moment with another product coming out this year, to sort of take the sort of the I suppose to take the sort of a lot of the engineering or the building work out of these units is to employ somebody else. So that's what I'll be doing hopefully later on this year, and that'll be easier for me as well. I mean, I need to spend a lot of time, more than I am at the moment, on doing a little bit of publicity and a little bit of advertising and stuff, which is always good,
Okay, what's the difference besides one being stereo and mono? What's the difference between a 660 and a 670?
Well, historically, as you probably all are aware. So stop me if you know all this. But I mean, yeah, the mono units sort of historically came out. I suppose. Well, I can't accurately say, but I would say if I were to sort of put a guess on it, I would say certainly within a 10-year period before the stereo units. The differences between the two, there's different transformers, there's a different power supply. It's all tube. There's nothing solid state there. There are different attenuators on the mono units. It's got more gain. And there's been various modifications done to these units over the years. I think maybe Abbey Road, I think maybe did some, or certainly EMI back in the day did some modifications to their 660, which I've decided to implement in the 660 versions of those units that have also come out, which came out last year. So there's quite a bit of difference, and I suppose ultimately it's about tone, and they all do what they say they do on the tin, but really it's about tone. And the differences between the mono for me and the stereo units, I suppose the tone is definitely one. It's presence, I think. There's a little bit more presence, I think, with the mono units. It still does the same thing when you drive them hard. When you limit them, they still end up behaving a little bit like the stereo units, but they're a little bit more, a little bit harsher. I would say. This is all, you know, and this is all somebody's opinion, really. But I think there's very little in between both units. But I would say of the two, the mono one is the harder sounding, more gain, more presence in the mids.
John?
Yeah, you mentioned that you have CNC lathing done or machining done on them to build them?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Do you do it?
Well, no, I personally don't do it. I mean, my manufacturing is limited to the building and construction of both these models. So I subcontract that work out, which is it's something I've done for many years. I don't have the capacity or the space really to.
I was wondering because my son does that. He does CNC machining. Well,
it's a good thing, and if I had some CNC machining capability here, it would ultimately save me a lot of money, because the cost of parts, if you look at it as a sort of a ratio with these units, it's a huge percentage of machining that it costs the most. The cost of parts, if you look at it as a sort of a ratio with these units. Got a bit of an echo going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to mute Robert. It was coming from his computer, but you're muted, Robert. You're gonna have to unmute yourself to talk. I muted you because we were hearing an echo. We were hearing your system.
Sorry, I was trying to properly log in.
Not a problem, bro.
You saw my female yoga thingy.
Yeah. Okay. John, did he answer your question fully?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And who else? Max, and who else had a question? Michael? Which one of you guys had a question?
I did.
Go ahead.
Actually, should I ask him the first one?
That's on you, bro.
All right, I'll ask him to marry me later. My serious question was, I mean, the detector circuits in in the 670 and the 660 are supposed to be somewhat magical. Can you kind of describe why it is what it is?
Hopefully. Yeah. So both of these units, if we start with the stereo one, because I think that's the sort of that's the common, the sort of the most known about. So with both these units, there's two amplifiers. So one's the gain reduction amplifier, which is on the input, if you like, and the detector circuit is after the output, further down the chain. So where the magic happens, where the magic happens, I think, is on the control input transformer. So all of it contributes to the magic and sound and tone of these units. So all the parts, so the transformers, the inputs, the input transformer, the output transformer, the control input, and the control output, the power supply, and all the components all contribute towards the magic and tone of these units. But in terms of functionality, the way these units behave, some of the way that these units behave is down to the control input transformer having a narrow bandwidth. So it's a bit like a seesaw. So in terms of bandwidth, so if you do a tone sweep on the input of these units, and then watch the meters as you sweep from 20 hertz to 40 kilohertz, you'll see the meters move down and then move back up again as the tone sweeps further up the bandwidth, up to 40K, let's say. So the reason for that is partly to do with the bandwidth of this transformer, and is to do with some other things as well. But the functionality of, or the operation of these units, these limiters, is partly down to the control input transformer, which is the third transformer in the sort of the line of, or in the chain of the circuit, if you imagine. So so all the stuff at the bottom, all the LF stuff, and all the top end stuff, all the HF material, is, shall we say, all left unattenuated or uncompressed or unlimited, and it's all the middle portion of your bandwidth that is compressed. So you get something like that. So that being your top, that being your bottom, and all the middle stuff is all sort of dipped out.
Now, is that the resonant tuning of that transformer, or is it part of the feedback circuit from the actual detector?
Good question.
It's the input to the detector. It's a feedback limiter, so it's everything after the output. So it's the second amplifier of the two in the 670, and your signal travels from the output into the control input, and then amplified, and then rectified at the output. But because the bandwidth of the transformer does that, all the HF stuff, which is down here, has a corresponding dip at the control output transformer. So it's a bit of a sort of a seesaw thing. So the further up the bandwidth you go, the less the output becomes the control output stage. So there's less feedback to the input. And it's to do with that transformer, partly.
Cool.
If that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it does.
I mean, if you did a sweep, for example, in fact, I can show you here, actually. I don't know if you can see this. So here's an example. So I just put my glasses on. So this is a sweep. So I don't know if you can see that. Yep. Can you see the lines on it? Yeah. So that's right. Okay. Well, that's the LF and that's the HF. So can you see the rise in the HF there at that end, and the sort of a corresponding rise at the LF this end? Well, that's all the stuff that's left uncompressed, and all the stuff that's compressed or limited is the bit in the middle, which is dipped out.
Wow.
So that's why they're bright without being harsh.
That's correct. That's exactly it. And what's happening is that your signal
group discount.
When you're describing tone, it's being a guitar player, I can kind of understand the hard thing it is about describing it, because like I've tried to find the right amplifier and the right guitar sound, and you can go from one amp to the next, and even though they may be the same make, if it's a tube amp, there's something different. I don't know if that adds anything to it, but I mean, I ended up taking a Vox amp and getting another and ordering a set of tubes from over in England and retubing the amp. And the only thing I can say about the tone is when you play it, it's like you know that's it. That's the only thing I can say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Tone is an interesting thing, and for me, all this equipment is about tone, because I suppose it adds something. It adds something to the. So it adds color to your program, but one of the reasons, I mean, tone changes from. I mean, as you've described very well, tone changes from tube to tube, and a lot of this is to do with the chemistry within the tube. So it's the cocktail of chemicals that they used on the anode, what they used for the cathode, and so you get a whole. Tube manufacturers are very they're very secretive about the kinds of cocktails of the chemistry of the types of tube, or the chemistry they use within tubes, because I suppose certainly back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was an important, it was an important aspect to and selling point to tubes, to the tube, to the valve. They do differ from one manufacturer to the next. I mean, I think maybe with some of the legislation that's come in, some of that material has gone now because they're not allowed to use it, and this of course has added to the change of tone on new tubes. So a lot of people like new old stock. I'll be the first one to admit I use as much new old stock as I can, but I'll only use what's commonly available. If I can buy new old stock 12X7s, perfect, which I can because there's a lot of them about. But I can't buy 638s anymore because they're 50 or 60 years old. No one makes them, and well, they do now, but there weren't enough to support this product. So back in 2008, when I at the 125th AES in San Francisco, I took one of these units together with a sample of a new tube, which was the 6386 tube, which was the kind of the Achilles heel to all of this. So without it, there'd be no product, and I wouldn't be here today. So So that was, it was a two pieces to the jigsaw, really. But tone definitely in manufacturing, tube manufacturing is really, really important. And new old stock tubes, of course, they're really good.
How close? Okay, the 6386 tube. The only reason I know about it is because one of our group members, in Pensado Students, Joe Vassetti, he commented, the 6386 tube, the sound of the Fairchild, or something like that.
Yeah.
How close is today's version of that tube?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's since the launch of this company, it's something that's followed me around for many years. People asking that question. It's a very difficult question to answer because mechanically the tube is the same. So it's a double triode. It's got a non-linearly spaced grid. So that is to say, it's wider in the middle than it is at the edges. And that's what separates these types of tubes from normal tubes. But the difference being, I suppose, ultimately, will be this cocktail of chemicals that was used by GE or RCA or whoever it was that manufactured these tubes in the 50s and 60s. It doesn't exist anymore. And what you need to try, what I tried to do was to try and to try and emulate this tube, certainly in terms of functionality. So its performance was matched. I mean, there are a lot of things about the new tubes which are far better than the older tubes, the older original tubes, in terms of balance, which is really, really key with these stereo units. The balance between the two sections within the double triode, that's really, really important. The performance, that's hugely important. And the operation and reliability. There were quite a few eggs broken before this started, I have to say. I mean, I spent 2 years trying to help JJ Electronics with developing this tube, and it was very, very difficult because I don't think the original blueprint for these tubes existed or exists anymore. So they were sort of built and developed, I guess, from first principles. So for a tube manufacturer, that's probably an eminently simple thing to do. But in terms of finding the chemistry or the same chemistry within the tube, that's a really difficult thing to do. So you have to accept that it's very difficult to try and bottle 50 or 60 years of magic within a new tube. You just have to keep making what separates these tubes with other tubes is consistency. And the more of these tubes that you can make, the more consistent and reliable they'll ever be. And we're getting to that stage now because they're up to, I think, serial number F, I think, and I don't know how many tubes they build in a batch, but it's to 3 decimal places. So and there's a that's quite a high number already. So so that's really good. And so we're already in this sort of area of high consistency, high reliability, and symmetry between the two sections within the tube. And that's really, really, really important. Really important.
Are these tubes being thrown in any other pieces of gear?
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, I mean, I think Manley's use them. I think there is a mod for the Manley Varimu, which uses them. It's not just me. It's not just me that uses them. It's there are a few other manufacturers, and it was a great thing to see at the in 2008 at the show. There are a lot of manufacturers coming up to the booth. In fact, I have actually I was having a little dig around this evening for some of the early stage tubes and the development of these tubes that I was involved with. So I've got some here, which so that's serial number 1, that tube there. I don't know if you probably won't be able to see this.
Higher. Raise it higher.
So yeah, but somewhere on here it says serial number. Anyway, it's engraved on here. I think it's there. You can see.
A little bit higher. 001. That's 001. That tube. So we're up. Oh, sorry. So we're up to whatever number we are with the suffix F now. Nice.
So it's three decimal places. So you can see that obviously we're up to, you know, the whole consistency thing is getting there, and it's really, really good. Some of the samples of the tubes that I took to the show and that I have here were all handmade, and I did many months of testing. So this is the first handmade sample of the 6386, the new one. So this predates any of the manufacturing of these tubes, and this is handmade. This tube here. So yeah, we really went to town on it, and you know, as I say, the real guide to all of this is to keep consistency up and to make, you know, many numbers of tubes, and that's how they get good, and that's why they were always good back in the 50s and 60s, because they made millions of them, and it didn't matter if a small percentage, you know, failed, because you know, they were making, you know, a lot more than that.
Okay, this means that you're a part of history. Somebody earlier typed, we're talking to a legend, because, you know, as time goes on, you know,
Hail the gods of tube.
You are a part of the legacy, and every time somebody is told that, even way back in the day, they have the same reaction. But you have helped. You've brought this thing back. You're a part of the legacy of that, and I'm sitting here like, wow, because all that talk I heard about Fairchilds, you know, all I had was the plugins, and I was never able to do a comparison. Sooner or later, I'll be able to do a comparison. But now I'm sitting here talking to a person who's making them, and who's, you know, brought that specific tube back for this, and now other manufacturers are using it. That's awesome, bro. Like.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I'll be honest. I was being a little bit selfish when I wasn't. To be honest with you, I wasn't thinking of that when I'd spent 2 years developing this, trying to redevelop this limiter, and I knew that obviously, you know, without that tube, it was going to be very difficult to put into production, and so, you know, it's great. I mean, it's great. It is great that you know, that other manufacturers can use this tube. I mean, that's really great. I think the difficulty with doing this is a lot of tube manufacturers are reluctant to get involved with it, because unless you put in an order for 100,000 pieces, they're not really interested in doing one-offs because of the tooling. And you know, any manufacturer will tell, tube manufacturer will tell you, you know, their question is, well, how, you know, if you want this tube, how many hundreds of thousands do you want? So I was very lucky. I must admit there was a lot of pestering, I think. You know, to try and get this tube done, but you know, it's a lot of it's been up to JJ Electronics, and you know, I certainly, there was a lot of time spent 3 o'clock in the morning doing static plate tests with the samples I've just showed you to try and see if the curves were right. I mean, what happened was, the way it worked is they sent me a batch of samples, and I did some some static plate tests with it, sent all the data back, and then they made some more tubes. Again, these were hand-built tubes that they sent back to me, and then I do the same tests again, and then send all the data back. And then eventually the curve and the data for the original GE6386 tube sort of came into focus a bit more, and you could see, and it was a bit of a light bulb moment. And so that's kind of generally that's sort of what happened, really. But there was a lot of toing and froing with tubes and data and spreadsheets and stuff, and I'm happy that's all behind me now, because that was quite a deal, actually, quite a deal. So, but it's good. We're there now, so it's a good thing. 9 years on now. 8 years on.
Okay, the components that go into this, you had spoken to me before about what it takes to build one of these. And you were just talking about the components that went in. You were showing me the components that went in. Could you show me some of that stuff behind you, bro?
Yeah, I can. I've actually, I don't know if you can, I get some, I've got, if I just move this unit round here like that, I don't know if you can see this.
I see the Fairchild, yes.
Yeah, you see that unit there, right? Okay. Well, I've got a 660 here. This one's in test at the moment, so I'm not going to open that up at the moment. But I've got a mono unit here, which I can show you. So I'm just going to bring this one. I try and build these things without putting the transformers on first, because it makes them very heavy. So I can put my glasses on. So I don't know if you can see that. This is in production at the moment. So so these boards here emulate the tag strips that were in them originally. So I've done away with the tag strips because for the purposes of manufacturing, I use 3.2 millimeter FR4 board PCB, so it's really thick, and it basically emulates the tag strip. So it's not a circuit board as such. It looks like a circuit board, but actually it just emulates the tag strip. So there's nothing that diminishes the original circuit, if you see what I mean. So and there's another board here again that emulates the tag strip down here. So there's a capacitor there, and this is all the gain reduction circuitry here, which is all stitched together and in a harness and wired. I use Musicap capacitors for the interstage capacitors here. Very nice polypropylene capacitors. And the power supply circuit up here. But it's the back of it, if I just move it around like this, it's quite heavy. Oh, so you can see the mains transformer here. And part of the reason I was explaining to you, I was trying to explain earlier, that so much of these units is about the tone, and there's more presence with these mono units because it shares the same. One of the reasons is it shares the same power supply. There's a big old transformer here, and delivering the same amount of energy as in the stereo units, and so. Part of the tone of these units is to do with the power supply, and with the stereo units, when you really drive the stereo units, you see here, the supply collapses a little bit. And I'm not talking much, but I'm sort of talking probably 10 volts on the HT, something like that. You can see the power supply sags and rises as the program is going through the unit. So it all sort of conspires with tone to deal with tone. So to change the tone. So it's not just one thing in these units that makes them sound the way they do.
Okay, how heavy is that? Because you're sitting there lifting that. It doesn't even have everything in it, and you're sitting there.
No. Yeah. These units weigh 60 pounds, so that's about 35 kilos. The stereo ones there. So they're very, very heavy. And the mono ones that I just lifted up here, they weigh about 20. They weigh about 40 pounds, something like that, about 40 pounds. Yeah, something like that. So they're very, very heavy. And I try and, when I build them, the last things to go on are the transformers. So because they make them a bit sort of unwieldy, and you can't do much of them once they've got transformers on. They just sort of sit there as a lump.
Okay, and who was that? Max, was that you that had a question?
Yes, sir. You were talking about the power supplies. When you're seeing that there's like a 10-volt sag as you get to maximum loading on the stereos, any idea what that actually translates on? I guess you might say on the low frequency content. Is that what? Is that that grunt that I've always heard that everybody's looking for?
Well, 10 volts is a figure I've just sort of plucked out,
Sure.
out of thin air, but you've got with tube amplifiers, it's all about volts. So if you lose volts, you lose gain, and with the HT on the stereo units, as with the mono units as well, sits at around 450 volts DC. So that's the B plus volts. But the regulated supply is around 240 volts DC. So that doesn't change because it's regulated, but the anode volts for the control output stage will collapse a little bit. It's very easy to demonstrate. You can measure it and run the unit at the same time, and you see the power supply doing this a little bit, but less so with the mono units. So again, it all adds to the tone of these units, and it's quite significant. It really is. It's very, very significant. A lot of people have tried putting solid state power supplies in there, and I mean that's a manufacturing thing, and I'm not knocking it, but that changes the tone of the unit too. So and my thing with these was always to maintain that they are as the originals, as close as possible. So I didn't want to put a solid state power supply in there.
And let's see, Charles, who had a question?
Yeah. So, this being such a big process, Simon, what made you decide to build it? As I understand, it's one of the most complex compressors around. Was it from an engineering point of view? Was it a record you heard or a memory working with it? I mean, it took you 2 years.
Yeah. Well, yes, a little bit. I mean, this originally started in 2002. So I spent 2 years developing the tube.
Yeah.
Maybe a little under. But I spent probably about 4 years, something like that, developing the stereo unit. Maybe more, maybe 4 or 5 years. Why did I do it? I don't know. I mean, I suppose. I mean, my sort of history goes back to manufacturing. So when I first started working back in 83, 84, I worked for a lab company making, but on a production assembly, making lab equipment for universities and schools and colleges and stuff. And I spent 5 years doing that. And then beyond that, I went to move into music. Went down to London, and that's kind of where I am today. But I suppose that's where all this stems from, really. I said my father was an engineer. He worked at Marconi's, and so you know, I suppose I took on the sort of, that's why I wanted to do it really. It's just sort of that was my interest.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Daniel Lynn, do you have any questions for him?
No, I'm good. We have one of these, and I love them. I just wanted
Oh,
to
you
be
have
here.
one.
I was going to ask Daniel to actually share his experiences because he's actually owns the very first unit we sold in the U.S.
Oh.
I was just about to ask, what does it take to get one in the U.S.? Daniel, please speak. Tell us about.
Hey, Daniel.
Putting me on the spot, Robert. Well, I won't take full credit. Our studio owner met Simon at AES, I believe, in what, 2008, Simon?
Yes, I think it was, and I think also at another show in New York.
Yeah, and he was so impressed and blown away by everything that Simon did that just had to have one, and they were nice enough to send us a demo, and we loved it, and I believe that demo even went to Blackbird in Nashville right after us.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been incredible to have. We throw everything through it we can. we call it our secret weapon. It's very nice.
Okay, what can you tell me it's doing? As in, he keeps saying tone. So,
Yeah.
say you're running a vocal through you're doing a vocal without it, and then you throw that on. What's it doing tone-wise?
Man, it really preserves the bottom end. That's what we've really noticed. So you can squash it, and a lot of things when you hit it that hard, the bottom end just goes away, or it really, you can hear the pumping, and this just preserves the bottom end. And so when you're throwing a vocal through it, the plosives don't really trigger it. And so the high ends are singing through, and it's just beautiful.
So you say it preserves the low end. Do you run low end audio through it?
Oh yeah, all the time. We actually a big practice of ours is we have one of the stereo units, so we put it on the end of the 2-bus. And so we're running the whole mix through it, so tons of bottom end. I frequently actually track bass through it as well, and love it. I mean, I just can't say enough good things.
So even though it's as expensive as it is, you say it's worth the money, huh?
No, absolutely, 100%.
No hesitation.
We drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, if you look at it, like Simon has invested so much time in this that he knows exactly what he's talking about. And then if you look at it compared to buying an original Fairchild, which none of them sound alike by now. Like they all have a different tone, so you don't really know what you're going to get for like 35 grand. And then Simon has his price to where you can get into the Fairchild market for less than half of an original. I mean, I just can't say enough good things.
My buddy Segur, I know I'm probably destroying his name, but that was him that entered. He's a mastering engineer. He's a part of from Subtle Students also. I have the plug-in experience, right?
Absolutely.
And now that I'm diving into all this gear where there's this high quality gear, and I'm learning about making sure I get something recorded awesome in. I've gained a great appreciation for quality gear, like how something feels, like the transient's not attacking my ear and getting it good on the way in, and then you just press play and it sounds good. But that's the only reason that I now buy into expensive pieces of gear, is because I've been experiencing this with a much better ear than when I first started out. Because when I first started out, I didn't have my ear wouldn't have appreciated it. Now, I'm actually wanting to find a place in California and run and do some, set up some video cameras and do a little like bring a singer in, do some tests, and see what this thing sounds like. But you're a customer. You say you're happy.
Oh, yeah.
Where you
We're
guys
100%.
located at? Where are you guys located at?
We're in Memphis, Tennessee.
It's Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
How many people have bought it in the United States so far, Simon?
Let me see. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can remember the places. So New York, there's one in New York, one in Miami, one in Virginia. One in New York, two in Miami, one in Virginia, and one with Ward Archer Studios. There's one in Los Angeles, and I think that's it. So is that 5?
Now, there's soon to be one in North Carolina, but we'll talk about that later.
Roland Murphy did, he did a review on yours, and I know Roland, and he likes the gear, and he spoke well about your product. When he did the review, he spoke well about it, and he said, well, he's been doing a lot of reviews on gear, and he was just like wow, like this costs a lot of money, but if you got the money for it, it's a good piece of gear to have.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, it is expensive, but I think the thing is with these, the problem with building these units is the time they take to make, because in the 50s and 60s, when manufacturing, when the sort of manufacturing what am I trying to say? Where large-scale manufacturing was adopted, you had avenues of assembly or assemblers manufacturing, well, perhaps in this case, different areas or different parts of the unit. Now, you could probably roll one of these out in the 50s probably in half a day or something like that, or maybe a week or something like that. I mean, they're phenomenally difficult to make. I mean, they look simple to use or simple to look at, but everything's balanced throughout the whole unit. There are no circuit boards. Everything's point-to-point wired. There's a separate, well, there's a power supply, but again, there's no circuit boards. And so everything within the unit has to be stitched together by hand, and somebody has to do it. Now, whether you have 20 people to do it or one person to do it, it all still needs to be put together. And obviously, I don't employ anybody at the moment to build these, so they take as long as they do. They take about 80 hours to make. So that's
80 hours. I know.
Yeah.
I know that if I was having one built, I'd want mine built specifically by you. I'd put in that request, and I liken this to, how I'd watch movies and there'd be some guy who's making a special chair, and it's made the old way, and it's intense labor and it's high quality labor. That's what this is to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, thank you. I mean, it's often a difficult one to sort of square with people, because what you always see, you see the end product, and that's great. And when these units are finished, with the best, obviously I love making them, and this is my company, and I enjoy doing this. But I never ever want to see them again. So they're made in a way that because if I've spent 2 or 3 months making these, I'd never want to see them again, because it's just that wouldn't make sense, for it to come back, So I have to make sure that there's a great deal of testing with these units that goes on in order to, there's sort of like a burn-in period of 2 weeks to let everything settle down, all the tubes sort of settle in, and it's a good way of checking for tube failures within that 2 week period. once the unit's been made. It's a bit like a sort of I suppose a car or a high-end car or something. You need to run it around a track a bit just to sort of let it, all the parts and let everything kind of, bed in a little bit. So that's what happens with these units. And as I say, they take a long time to make, and that's great. There's a little bit of time at the end to run them in. But once that happens, short of tube failure, which can always happen, I wouldn't expect to see them again, because that's just the way they're made, and it certainly wouldn't make any sense, any financial sense to build them that way. So you make them and they go out the door, and then that's it.
Once, if a tube goes out, they can just replace the tube, and it's a simple thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's a very simple process of. I mean, if any one of these tubes goes, it's possible to replace, and particularly with the gain reduction stage, which is the most sort of sensitive, I suppose, of the circuit. It's the shortest signal path. But in terms of replacing tubes, they're all serial numbered, and they can be replaced. They should be replaced in pairs. So if you get one at the top failing on the left channel, it's also good to replace the one on the right channel in the same position, so that you have a matched signal path as you did before. So it's pretty straightforward, and they're all serial numbered. So I can say to JJ, it's serial number 1234. Please, can you supply me 2 tubes with 1, 2, 3, 4 data, and the other one with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data, and they'll happily do that.
How many tubes are in a unit?
There's 8 gain reduction tubes. What I might do, I might turn these. There's 20 tubes, by the way. So I was going to try and turn this around. So I don't know if you can see any of this. So this one's live at the moment. I'm trying to run it in. It's on. So I don't know if you can see any of that there.
Yes.
So this is the back of the unit here. You've got the power supply up here. Try and point. So that's power supply, power supply, power supply, power supply, power supply transformer, another power supply transformer, and inductor. So there's 3 transformers here and 4 tubes alone just for the power supply. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 tubes in the back.
Okay, and what role does the power supply play in the actual tone and operation of the unit? Because a lot of people, when they get gear, they end up replacing the power supply, wanting to get higher quality power supplies.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's no signal that goes through the power supply. The power supply just provides single-ended supplies for the anode volts for here, for the gain reduction stage, and anode volts for the control output stage, which is from this point onwards down there. So you've got supply volts for this set of tubes down here. I mean, all of it is to do with the operation of the unit. And if you have no supply, you have no audio. So, and it's like power supplies in any piece of audio equipment. If you have a bad power supply, you have bad audio. So it's fairly fundamental to the operation of the unit.
Right, right. No, I'm talking about, okay, like a unit. I'll go buy a piece of gear, and one of the first things somebody will say is, replace the power supply, get a higher quality power supply, because the audio will end up better. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I could, if I put a solid state power supply in here, it would probably be better. It would probably be more, it would be more efficient for a start. But in terms of changing the tone of the unit, the way it sounds, you wouldn't get that sort of collapsing of voltage that I was explaining a minute ago. So when you really drive these units, the HT collapses a little bit, so it adds perhaps a little bit of sustain or something to the program, which goes through. It's a very short signal path on here, so it just goes through these 4 tubes here for the left channel and 4 for the right, and then it comes in here, goes through that transformer, comes out of that transformer, through here, into these tubes, out of that transformer, and it appears here. All the rest of this is to do with AC threshold and power supply. So it's a tiny circuit, but anything that you do to this will affect the sound. So if you have a noisy power supply, that's going to impact on the sound. If you have a very, very quiet power supply, that's also going to impact on the sound. And my feeling with these units was, if I started changing the power supply and put a solid state power supply in there, it would change tone of the unit. If I decided to put a solid state detector circuit, AC threshold circuit here, that would also change the functionality of the unit. So I think I just decided, really, it was just best to leave it all alone. And when I took that unit back in 2008, but I took it to the show, I could then say, well, look, here is something that has been built as closely to the original as possible. That was why, really. So I didn't change anything. I didn't change the power supply, because I knew by changing the power supply that would change the operation and functionality of the unit. There are far more people out there that know these original units better than I do in terms of operation. They've spent years and years and years using them. So you could put one of these in front of them, and they may say, oh, well, it doesn't sound like this. When you really drive these units, the tone of these units sounds different. So I thought, well, to avoid all of that, I wanted to build them as original, in their original state, like this. So
yeah, I was thinking, wondering about transients, how the power supply affects transients. You said functionality, like when you change it, if you were to use a different power supply, will the transients be affected? You said functionality is affected. Would that affect how it responds to transients, or how it?
Yes, it would do. Yeah, it would do. I mean, to give you an example, if I'll just turn these units around again here. So. There we go. So when these units, this hasn't got any gain reduction tubes in the minute, so the meters are off. But normally the needle, when you switch them on, the needles sit at 0 VU, and that's where they stay until you start cranking up the AC threshold there, and sending signal back into it, and that's when you see the meters move. But the current draw of the unit is less when the meters are like this than it is when the meters are like that. So there's less demand on the power supply when you drive the circuit harder, and then of course that obviously changes the tone of it. So and obviously if you get signals will behave, I suppose, differently with a different power supply. With a solid-state power supply, you've got a solid-state power supply is just, it's in terms of this, it would be 450 volts solid. There wouldn't be any change when you started to to the power supply when you started feeding signal in and feeding signal back in order for these meters to move. So that, I suppose, the attack time would change.
All right, would you tell us about the lat-vert matrix?
Yep. Well, so on the very first sort of couple of units, I didn't have this lat-vert model and switch here. So and this was something that I sort of ran out of time to develop before the first show. So I just basically had to get the original unit there with the tubes. I had to get it to the show, but I always knew that original units had this, and I like the lat-vert setting because again, it adds more functionality to the unit, and it's a mid-side compressor. So all the early units had the stereo linking, so that's fine. But what I wanted to do was to try and remove some of the wiring from the front panel. And on the original units, all the mid-side wiring, all the lat-vert wiring goes up to a switch positioned here on the original units. But that was an awful lot of wiring, and I kind of needed to do away with all of that because that's just more to go wrong. So I spent a couple of years developing a board. I'll just show you that. It's just here. My glasses on, is that it? So it basically mimics. So this board here. I don't know if you can see that there. So there's two of these boards. So one sits at the input.
Okay.
And the other one sits at the output. And there's four relays on it, and it basically mimics the switch on the original units. So you can imagine that cuts down an awful lot of wiring to have these boards. And relays are things you can replace. Switches are a bit harder when you've got many wires going up to them. And if you have to replace them, that's a bit of a job. So so I kind of wanted to develop this board here in order to allow me to implement the lat-vert, which is what it does, and it's exactly the same thing, except the wiring doesn't come up to the switch; it just does it on 4 relays underneath, behind the panel there. So so the way it works is it's a sum and difference. It turns this unit into a sum and difference processor. So so you feed your stereo signal in, and your left, what would be your left channel, is summed with the right channel, and any out of phase difference or out of phase component within the program is processed along the right channel there. So so if you pan things hard right, for example, you would see this meter move. If you panned it hard left, it would do the same. The summing of program would be shown on this meter here. So that's the lat, and that's the vert, and it's a sort of mid-side processor. So very cool piece of switching. Actually, it's good.
Okay, now, how does compression actually happen inside this? What is actually causing the compression?
So so it's a feedback limiter, and it's perhaps not the fastest of limiters. You get feed forward limiters, which have this part of the circuit here at the input, but this is at the output. So it's a little, I suppose it's a little bit slower, maybe. But it's still pretty quick, and so the compression works with you have your gain reduction tubes. So the conduction through the tube, through the gain reduction tube, is controlled by a grid, and so the more negative volts you put onto that grid, the less conduction there is through the tube, and that is your limiting, if you see what I mean. So it's controlled by the amount of signal coming out of here, which is fed back it's rectified and fed back into a DC in the form of DC back to the secondary of the input transformer. So it appears on the grid as negative volts. And the more negative volts you have, the less conduction you have through the tube. That's your limiting.
Now these things have a lifetime warranty on them, right?
Yes.
That just seems so out of place today.
Well,
it's a lifetime warranty.
Yeah, it does. I mean, but again, it goes to it just goes to the core of this product because I wanted to make them, so I didn't ever want to see them again. I wanted to have something here which it's a kind of a little, I don't know, in any manufacturing environment, obviously there's going to be we live in the music industry is a technical industry, and so things do happen, stuff breaks, but you try and mitigate that as much as possible, and it's you try and mitigate it, certainly with these, because they're very heavy. They're not easy to ship, these units. So the whole unit, including the flight case, is about 41 kilos, something like that. So they're very, very heavy. So you want to make sure that when they leave here, they don't come back. So and obviously you can't. Tubes break. That just happens. Tubes become noisy, but you can replace those easily. It's much harder to ship these units. So that's the reason why they're given a lifetime warranty, because I just want to, I need to try and get the message across that once these units have been made, that's it.
Because you're crazy.
Was this? I'm reading something. It said Adele 21. This was actually used on the Adele 21 album. One of these?
Yeah, it was. It was used on. I'll have to check. Yes, it was.
I believe it was used on the piano with Francesco. I think. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, there's a few examples of this in the charts at the moment. I mean, Amy Winehouse, for example. I mean, they're demonstrated quite well, these units in the charts. I mean, in particular, obviously, I mean, Amy Winehouse is a very good example.
On her vocal?
Well, it was used on Valerie, but it was after she died, they did another album, and it was a sort of there was another version of Valerie that came out, and it was used on her vocals then. So if you listen to her vocal, you hear a lot of people often they associate sort of words like depth and dimension and stuff like that with these units, and in terms of her voice, it brings the voice forward. So it's to do with this sort of dipping thing that I was telling you about. So if you re-EQ that back up at the board, I suppose you re-EQ the mids back in, so you effectively bring that voice further out into the mix, and so that's what gives you that sort of screaming mix or vocal, often associated with Fairchilds, I suppose. So it's that's one example. There's been a few albums, the Maccabees. Off the top of my head, I can't remember anymore, but there's been quite a few. So, but that's good, and they're all good examples of this unit being used, actually, either as on individual tracks or across the mix bus.
Max typed over to the side. On average, how long does it take to get one once you've ordered it?
Well, it depends on the production cycle. I generally say it's about 2 to 3 months, but I mean it can change. And production times change, the availability of parts I get a lot of parts from the US, so lead times change as well. So generally it's 2 to 3 months. but it can be a little bit longer.
Now we'll see. Like for me, I have Fairchild plugins, right? I'll see 50 hertz, 60 hertz, a switch. On these units, would that actually affect the tone or the operation?
Which plugin is that?
We have the Waves Fairchild, but it's on several, like there's several plugins out there where there's a 50 hertz, 60 hertz switch, and there's all this talk about that making a difference. You know, I'm in the plugin world, so I have no idea of reality when it comes to the gear like that.
I'm not sure because there isn't obviously there isn't that type of a switch on the original units. But what it's doing down at that low end is I mean, if I just refer you back to this drawing again here, so if you look at all the LF here, you can see here. So I mean, it might be something to do with the way it rolls off. I don't know if you can see that. So that's again that's a sweep that I did. I don't know if you can see the lines there, but you can see it when it's pushed. It tends to sort of go off like at the top there like that, and it's quite a few dB actually. I bet you've got 4 dB there, and you've got 9 dB here. So all of this portion of the signal is left, as is this sort of portion of the signal here, and you can see there's a kind of a thing going on here. So the dip.
A little higher, please. A little higher. Okay. Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe that switch is something to do with that. I haven't played around with that plugin, so I couldn't honestly say. But yeah, of course, altering any low F LF like that will change the tone of your program. Of course, it will.
Okay. No. It's just there's many conversations on groups online where, like here in America, our hertz, it's where I'm at, it's 110 to 120 hertz volts and 60 hertz, and then they'll, we go somewhere else and the voltage is whatever at 50 hertz, and people are saying that makes a difference. And
right. Okay, sorry, I think I misunderstood you. Sorry. Yeah, there's yeah, that's very true. It does. Again, it's that the original units, as with these units, are all shipped with a saturation transformer. Now, on the original units, that was a sort of rectangular grey block, which was a transformer on the back of the unit, and I've seen a lot of units that were shipped over from the US here in this country that were shipped at 60 hertz, running at 50 hertz. So the voltage for the regulation on the heaters, which is all to do with this stage here, changes. So if you run those saturation transformers, they've got it's a transformer with it's a coil on the primary. And 2 coils on the secondary, and 1 coil is your output, which is on the secondary, and there's another coil with a capacitor across it, and that capacitor value has to change depending on what country you're in. So if you're in the US, it would be one value. If you were in the UK or Europe, it would be another value. But if you don't change that capacitor and run it at a different voltage, the output of that transformer changes, and it shouldn't change, but it changes. And if it's lower, the meter readings on here are correspondingly lower. So, yeah, that's certainly that can change things as well, definitely.
Does anybody have any questions for him?
Yes, Simon.
Hello.
Yes, I was thinking about the actual phase differential that occurs in the low frequency range while going through the Fairchild. Is this still an issue, or have you addressed that in the newer models that you're recreating right now?
Could you explain that bit more? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I'll explain it a bit slower then. When we were using the out of the box, like the real units back in the 70s and the 80s in the studio, we had a problem. We had to rectify the actual signal with an elliptical unit, a parametric unit, in order to alleviate that phase differential that happens in the low frequencies when you have the stereo as opposed to two mono going out and then mix it down. Is there still an issue with that unit that you're recreating currently, or?
Is this with is this to do with the lat-vert setting?
Yes.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, nothing has changed on these units with the original units.
Okay.
There's I know what you're talking about. But nothing has changed.
Okay.
In terms of the way that circuit works.
Awesome.
So that's all. There's been nothing added or taken away with that circuit, as with any of this circuit. All I've added, really, I suppose, is the stereo link.
Yeah.
The lat-vert is the same. It sums together two halves of your left and right input, and then sums together your two halves of the input circuit again on the other half of the transformer, but switches it out of phase.
Okay. Okay.
So,
yeah.
And the same, and the corresponding output is the same. So it's reproduced back into stereo again.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, awesome, thanks. I was just thinking, because I know with the algorithms on the plugins that we're using right now from Waves, it self-corrects if there is some kind of a problem. But I wasn't sure if that unit was still using the same path in order to treat the signal, and how I was recuperating it after the feedback compressor was enabled.
No, it's nothing. Nothing has changed, and
Awesome.
hopefully. Well, nothing's changed, and I kind of wanted to leave it the way it is. I suppose I could have made the power supply better or the side chain better, but there wasn't really any point in doing that.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
If it's not broke, then don't fix it. Exactly.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks a million for sure.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Which one of these did the Beatles use? The 660, 670?
I think they used the 660.
Yep, that's what Geoff said.
But I can't be sure.
That's what Geoff Emmerich said at the EES. Remember when we were in Los Angeles? Geoff Emmerich came up to us to the booth to look at Simon's mono unit and said that he used two 660s. That's what he said, which freaked me out because I always thought it was 670 until then.
So did I. I thought that was a Doug question, 670. Okay.
Yeah.
Who else has questions for him? Ran you guys out? Go ahead, Max.
Will you marry me?
You've been saying that the whole time.
He's relentless with that one, eh?
I just want it. I want 670s and 670s bad. What can I tell you? You know, I'll do anything. Well, within reason.
Within reason, eh?
Well, yeah, put your order in.
I definitely will.
So
for the wedding cake or for the unit?
I'll go for both if I have to. I don't care.
Okay. Are you going to end up making any more? Do you have any plans for coming out with different product besides these two?
Well, yes. I'm building a little. Well, I'm a little bit more down to earth actually. I'm building a much smaller product, sort of a mid-price product at the moment, which it'll be able to be assembled and tested, hopefully all within a day, as opposed to 2 to 3 months. But it's something, again, it's tube based, it's tube related, and it's much smaller. It's not a compressor, but you know, it's just something to make that doesn't take a long time to make. It's lots of reasons. I just wanted to try and build also something a little bit smaller, just for a little bit, just to see how that does. And interestingly, actually, it's been built with sub-miniature tubes. So, in fact, I can get you some of these. I'll just show you. 1 second. Hang on.
It's like the tube valve, little tubes they have in the guitar amps nowadays.
So he's using a 12A7 that was put in a missile. Watch, he's going to tell you about it.
No kidding.
Yeah, watch.
So, these mil-spec tubes are commonly available, actually. So there's no problem there, and they're wire-ended. So they're slightly different, and they're only 8-pin. So this little thing here, like that. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you compare the size of that tube against, let's put this one up, like a standard tube here. So that's your standard size tube there, and that's your sub-miniature tube there. So there's a little bit of a difference in size there. But the thing is, with these tubes here, they're ruggedized tubes. So they've gone through an exhaust testing. So they'll be very reliable in the field. Again, the whole thing with manufacturing, for me anyway, at least, is reliability. And you know, once they go out of the door, then you know, short of something running over it, they won't come back.
What are those tubes used for? The militarized tubes or whatever?
Well, I found these actually. Sylvania made a branch of their tube manufacturing was done for the military, done for the government. Back in, well, these tubes actually, they're not that old in terms of tube manufacturing. I think these were manufactured in 1981, so that's quite recent, really. But they made tubes for the government for missile guidance systems, and so you have to so you can imagine the reliability of these tubes traveling at 80,000 feet. Has to be quite, you know, it has to be quite, you know, have to be quite reliable. So, so that's why I chose to use them.
If it's good enough for a missile, it's good enough for a compressor, for a audio unit. Oh, that's cool.
I was hoping that you'd do a preamp, like with you know, some high quality preamp. If those the 6338 or 88 or whatever the tube is, I forget what it is.
Yeah.
What is it? 63 what?
6386.
6386.
Yeah.
I'm actually hoping that you come back and say, yeah, I've got this preamp that I'm doing. It has that lovely whatever because I'm using such and such and doing such and such.
Yeah. Well, I mean this is going to be a little preamp. And again, it's about tone. So all of these things, they're all different and add different color to your program. So that's so this again will be something different. It'll be a lot simpler. It's just going to have one knob on it, and that's it. And it'll be probably be a stereo version of it as well. So. Yeah, so that's going to come out this year.
You said this year?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. No, I was hoping to have it out. I was hoping to have it ready by the end of this month, but I've had a few sort of production delays and stuff, so it's probably going to be March now or something like that. So I'll have a prototype ready by the end of March, April time. So it's going to be it's a little mic pre.
What
Not
color of units are you able to order?
Sorry. Sorry. I think you just I just missed that. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
I understand that there's a possibility you can do custom color ordering.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely. Again, this sort of adds to the uniqueness of models or manufacturing. So I've got behind me here. I don't know if you can see. I've got a green one here. So. Sorry. Just. So this is. I don't know if you can see this. So just. So this is a mono unit. This is anodized and celery green.
It's not quite a Siemens green, is it?
It's no, it's not. It's probably the light actually. It's probably not very good. But this is the inside of it here, like that. Get that straight there, like that. So, but this is anodized on 5005 grade aluminium. So it's hard outdoor, hard wearing aluminium. So it won't anodized aluminium. So it won't wear off or chip or anything like that. So
oh, cool. So you could do like a metal flake.
Yeah. Yes. It is aluminium, but it's a different type of alloy. Different type of aluminium. It's a harder wearing aluminium. It's an outdoor. It's for outdoor use. Well, you wouldn't use it outdoors, but do you know what I mean? It's meant for kind of. It's quite tough. The surface is very tough. So.
Yeah. Way cool.
So I've done a gold one, and I've done an straight anodized one, and I'll show you the gold one, which is here. So this is. I've got a gold panel here, which was anodized in gold. So
you mean like real gold?
Well, it's anodized in gold, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's got black. Oh, sorry. It's got black engraving here, and it's a stereo unit. So.
Pretty work.
Yeah. So and I've got the chassis behind me. Just I don't know if you can see that. I'll just turn me around here. I can see this unit here. You can see that. So this panel that I just showed you is for this unit here. So it's a bit heavy, but I don't know if you can see that. So you can see the gain reduction stage on the right, all the AC threshold along the bottom, the power supply in the top left, and that's the back of it there.
So I can go ahead and just get you to ship that one straight to me now, or?
There's a 50% deposit.
Yeah.
So,
you were saying the word aluminium. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, is he meaning aluminum? But I just went and looked it up.
Sorry, aluminum. Aluminum. Sorry. Yeah.
Aluminum is correct.
But
I went and looked up aluminum, and it says it's harder, it's stronger than aluminum, and it's part of the boron group with a symbol of Al, atomic number 13. So is it aluminum or aluminium? Which one is this made of?
Aluminum.
It is aluminum.
It's the same. I think that's the same thing.
No.
aluminium.
That's crazy. I'd like to comment also though, like with that gold unit that Simon did, which is for one of our clients in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Simon tries to meet all of these crazy requests that we get. So for example, that gold unit, the guy goes, "Can you do it in gold?" And Simon's like, "Well, yeah, of course." He's like, "No, everything in gold. I want the inside gold." And Simon's like, "Okay." So Simon just bends over backwards to do exactly what you want, and it's just it's insane. It's insane.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, aluminum and aluminium are the same thing. It's actually,
I think
it's got
thing.
both. Yeah, it's got both over here. Okay.
Oh, okay. But there's
Yeah.
different grades of aluminum. It's a sort of
Depending on the bauxite used to render it.
Right. I'm not sure of the materials used in it, but I know that's the ones for the anodizing are a lot harder wearing, and it's to do with the anodizing is a chemical process. So I
It's
suppose
a nano coating of sorts, isn't it?
It's as I understand it, it's dipped in an acid bath.
Yeah.
With a dye.
So there's people out there who are flat out customizing. Like, I mean, you said lettuce green. So the studios out there are getting these specially made tools. Like, I mean, you've got to have throwaway cash to be sitting here, you know, getting down to lettuce green. Like if somebody's specifically requesting lettuce green, I could just imagine walking into somebody's studio and seeing one or two of these. They make a statement all to themselves. Okay, so anybody, huh?
No, I was going to say it's just I think it's what sort of it makes them a little bit unique. I think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, Robert was saying that you bend over backwards to help people. It shows, and you have to if you're doing lettuce green and.
Well, we had a request. We had a request a few years ago, which we didn't end up doing, sadly. But this person wanted a paisley pattern on the front of his unit.
So you didn't give Prince his Paisley Park?
I don't know what happened, but he did the pattern for the panel, and for whatever reason we never went ahead and did it. But it would have been quite an interesting look, actually. Would have been a bit sort of confusing to look at, I think, with Paisley, but it's a great pattern. So. But I just in terms of the manufacturing, I just wanted to show you here. I've got there's no circuit boards in these units, but what there is are these. They're just don't know if you can see these here.
Yes.
The little wiring trees, and there's 11 of these per. Well, for the stereo unit, there's 11 of them, and so so what happens is with these is they get populated with components. So I've got some here, which I did earlier. Just get them out of its box. So this is the this here. So they end up looking like this.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So so instead of circuit boards, we have these little things here. And so you can see the anode resistors on here, and there's some more resistors around the side. But they literally get strapped between the terminals at each end of the wiring tree. So they're good because these units, all this as you all know, typically, tube gear gets very hot, and these are no less, a good example of that. They're 175 watts consume. They consume 175 watts of energy. They get very hot, And if you have modern parts in there, you can't really put circuit boards in there because they just won't sort of stand up to it. So, and I know I've said I've got these little things here, but this, you can see the thickness of these boards here. They're about 3.2 millimeters. So, yeah. And that's a tiny sort of aspect to the to the unit. So inside here, if I just open this one up here, so these units are they're designed to be. So if you ever if anything ever happens to them, you can work on them easily. So I don't know if you can see that. So like that. So
this is like the old school cars, not the new cars today. This is like the old school cars where you could actually get in there and go to work.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's it. As I say, my background is manufacturing, so so I work at a studio, of course.
That is simply breathtakingly awesome.
Yeah. So you can see these are your attenuators here, your input stage. That's your balance controls that balance up each section of the gain reduction stage. That's your zero control there. This is your AC threshold. Now with these, there's an option to have stepped AC threshold. So this unit here is going to Metropolis Studios in Chiswick, London, and it's on at the moment, switched on. So there's 21 positions here. They're all 1% per division. So there's 50 resistors on the back of these switches here. So in a mastering application, for example, or a studio application, you can easily recall the position of these pots from one.
Linear pots. All right.
What's the price difference between the ones with the step switches?
I can't remember in dollars, but they're these are, to have these, they are £350 to have those.
So £350 extra.
Yeah, £350 extra to have them stepped, and then the whole sort of engraving thing that goes on, because the variable ones don't have the middle spot on the ident there, so variable ones are just variable, but these ones have got an extra division, so they've got a 15-degree division between each, between each step. So
508 extra US dollars.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, $500, something like that. So.
Okay. And when somebody gets these, do they have to do a burn-in?
Yes. No. Well, I do, but you don't. I mean, after they've been, this one, for example, is being burned in at the moment, so it's just sitting here, just on. It's not doing anything. What I want to see the measurements are consistent over a long period of time. And so that's important to me, because if I see they start to drift, then something's wrong. So I quite happily leave these units sort of sitting on here before they leave the workshop, and then once they leave the workshop, they'll go into a kind of real studio situation. In this case, this will go to Metropolis Studios, and the burn-in will happen there, and it'll just sit there being used, and then I'll monitor it over a 2-week period. To see if all the figures are right, and then once it's commissioned, it's good to go.
And what's this about Miles Howell at Abbey Roads testing them for mastering projects?
Miles Showell.
Showell?
Yeah, Miles Showell.
Showell?
Yeah.
Okay. What's this about him testing them now on mastering projects?
Well, he's had Miles has had 1 or 2 of these units in the past of these units to use. So he's been amazing, really. It's been fantastic to have him test these as well. So So yeah, we're totally indebted to him as well for being able to use these across his projects. So it's great. It's been really, really good.
Now, if somebody wants to buy one of these, how do they reach you? What do they have to do?
Well, you can if it's in the US. I mean, Robert. Well, Robert, you see here. Robert handles all the US sales, and I generally handle all the UK sales. The European sales are handled by Joystick Audio in Belgium, and sort of between sort of the two of or the three of us, we get units out. So, but it all starts here in this workshop here. So they're not made anywhere else. They're all made in this room here.
Okay. And if I need one of the tubes, if I need to purchase one of those tubes, how much do they run? The 6388?
86. Yeah, I think they're about 100. I think they're about 100 euros, something like that. You can see them. I think Tube Zone is it? They have them advertised. There's quite a few outlets actually. I mean, it's not an exclusive with me, for example. You can get them you can buy them anywhere. I mean, I get them for these projects, but you can buy them anywhere through most tube outlets.
Would you please explain new old stock?
Okay. Well, new old stock is. This, for example, this is new old stock. So it's new, but it's old stock.
I can't see it. Raise it higher, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. That's the small miniature tube I showed you earlier.
That's the new old stock.
Yeah, that's a new old stock tube. So they don't make these anymore, but there's sufficient quantities of this tube to make. A good production run.
So all new old stock means is there's a whole bunch of tubes, product that was not used, and they're now put back into service. You can order them.
Well,
Yep.
That's it. They've in most cases they're boxed and new like this, and they've been sitting on a shelf for 30 years.
Got you. And so the new old stock then runs what price?
Well, the new old stock, 6386. I haven't seen any of those for a while. They could be they'll be, I would imagine, over $140 each.
Okay.
But again, you're buying something that's 50 years old, 60 years old. So,
Okay, Jova said he just put $400 for them, something like $400 plus dollars for new old stock. Wow, and it's 50-something years old, and yeah, okay.
So that's the problem we faced with these original units, and I don't get me wrong. I mean, I love these original units. I think they're fantastic. I think they are fantastic. They're fantastic because they've been going this long. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. But sometimes, I've never seen an original unit that hasn't had something done to it. Generally, it's the power supply, but it's also the saturation transformer that's been replaced. This saturation transformer here took 18 months to develop here because it was important that these units these transformers go in with these units because historically that's what they had.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see that. There. That transformer there. And they get very hot, but they're supposed to.
Okay.
So.
And it took 18 months, as in you developed that?
I developed this with there was a transformer manufacturer in Texas that developed it for me.
Bro, this is a crazy labor of love.
What's the internal temperature running at, Simon?
Sorry?
What's the internal temperature average running inside of the unit when it's running? Like 60 Celsius or 80 Celsius or?
It's probably around about 45, something like that.
Okay. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad.
A lot of the heat comes from the inside.
Yeah.
So all the wiring is Teflon insulated wiring. So it lasts, well, hopefully forever.
Yeah, it'll outlive the lasting life of the owner, I'm sure.
So there are no shortcuts taken on this. Is the bottom line, right? This is
there's no shortcuts.
That's the real McCoy, man.
So
you're building heirlooms. The only way I can see it is you're building heirlooms. Wow. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Jordy, did you have any questions? Didn't think I was going to call you like that, huh?
Oops.
Do you have any questions? No, Jordy? Let's see. Who? David. Anybody? You guys got any questions before we head out?
No, Matt. Thanks.
Now your website is Analogue Tube, or is Analogue Tubes is a plural?
it's one word. It's I will 1 second.
I got it on the chat.
Analogue Tube, yeah, singular. ANALOGUETUBE.com.
Yeah, but it's the European spelling for analog, not the American spelling. The GUE.
www.analoguetube.com, all one word, Analogue Tube.
It's this.
There we go. That works. Got it. And he's also on Facebook. When you guys go to look at this video, all his information is on there. Facebook, Twitter, and the website analogtube.com. Let's see, Robert, are we missing anything that we should talk about before we head out?
Oh, I don't know. Pretty good, man. Pretty good. You've gotten a lot of the good questions, I would say. Thanks, Simon, for doing this, man. It's amazing, Simon.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Matt, for giving me the platform for the project and for this company. It's been great.
We owe you a thank you, bro. David is asking about your favorite settings. Do you get to run audio through this, as in, run your guitar or anything like that? Are you doing anything where you're running sound through this yourself?
Yeah, I do, but because I have a little test set up here where I can A/B the source and the program and the unit, and that's really, really good because it allows me to instantly hear the difference between the program that you're putting through the unit and not, and it's really important because the thing with these units is that they should not be any different from one unit to the next. So I know how they sound, and that's really, consistency is really, really important. But I don't know, my sort of favorite settings, I like some of these settings up here, some sort of 5 and 6. There's some interesting settings. I mean, the attack and release times for these units are. I've just got a little crib sheet because I can never remember what they are, but they're about 100, 200 microseconds. So they go, well, that's the
Scam froze, eh?
These settings 5 and 6.
Say that again.
Yeah,
The
I was going
settings.
to say. Yeah, these settings 5 and 6 are they sometimes, I think they call them automatic settings, but they're very, very program dependent, and they're program level dependent. So the release time is different depending on how much level you put through the unit. So, for example, setting 5, for example, they call it an automatic program setting. So it's 2 seconds for individual peaks and 10 seconds for multiple peaks. So that's 10 seconds is quite slow. But if you go to position 6 on here, like that, you've got 300 milliseconds for individual peaks. So that's quite quick, really. But 10 seconds for multiple peaks, but 25 seconds for consistently high program material. So if you've got that going on, and some of that going on, and the meters are pinned down at the bottom here, as soon as you take it out or stop the program, it takes 25 seconds for the needles to reach 0 again. So, but again, it's all program dependent, and that's with these 2 settings here, 5 and 6. So they're quite interesting, really. I quite like them.
Are the settings matching the original?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, they're the same. It's the same settings as the original, and the mono unit has the same settings as the stereo unit. So there's no difference there. The thing with the mono unit is that you can stereo link them, and you can link multiples of them. So if you've got 2 or 3 units, or more, you can link those together. But you've got a key insert switch, so you've got an extra input on the back, which allows you to do de-essing with it. So you can feed an EQ signal into the mono. An EQ'd signal into the second input of the back of the unit, and it appears here electrically. It appears here at the control input stage, so you can use it for de-essing or ducking. I think you use it for ducking.
What's the benefit of running it through with no compression, anything like that going on? Just running it through, and
Again, tone. We're back to our old friend tone again.
So that affects the tone. Nothing, yep. No compression, anything.
Yep. Yeah, it'll add. It'll add a little bit of warmth. It's a straight line amplifier, so it's a 20 dB line amplifier. So here, so you can just use it as a straight line amplifier. And people do. In mastering, they have none of that going on here, and just run it as a sort of a unity or something like that. You get a little bit of separation as well. Nice bit of add separation, which is cool. So yeah, there's lots of advantages in just running it as a straight line amplifier. Sounds nice.
Okay. And Simon A. Billington out there, if you're listening, no, he's not giving any away free for attending the show. But shout out to you anyway. Yeah, guys have been like, let's just say, there's of course there's the chatter where it's like, man, I'm not going to spend that much money because we have the plugins, and then there's the gear porn. There's such a wide thing.
It's difficult. Plugins are great, and you can't get away from that. Plugins are great, but there's something that plugins I feel, and tell me if you think this is wrong, but there's something with plugins that there's something with these units here that plugins find difficult to emulate because there's a certain randomness with the way these units work. So, for instance, when you switch them on, they work quite happily after a sort of 20 or 30 seconds, but again, a lot of what's inside there changes a little bit in terms of operation. So because it all gets warm, voltages change, noise levels change, lots of things change. As soon as you switch this on, it starts to change, and it sort of changes over a period of time. Now, it doesn't change in a way that you would notice, but it sort of adds sort of something which is a bit difficult to define. And the thing with a plug-in is that you can have all of that and have it all defined at the flip of a switch, a soft function switch, which is not the way these work. So I don't know.
My experience has been that when everything is exactly the same, something is lost. So I understand. Like if I have 50 plug-in Fairchilds, like one on every track, and I have 50 tracks, there's a sameness there, and that the differences amount to something. Like I'll set up a stereo compressor and unlink the sides and do something so that there's a difference. And I hear it. I can't speak for these, but you know, I understand what you're talking about. The change.
It's a bit unknown, but I think that's what's nice about music is there is a bit of unknown. There's a bit of an unknown quantity in outboard gear generally, which adds to the dynamic of program of music, which makes it a bit unpredictable. And that's nice. That's a nice thing to have, I think. But it's not always possible.
We just went and got a this here. Let me see.
Oh yeah.
This it's a black box preamp. Eric
Nice.
Gracie, one of my Kinsadian brothers, he makes this. And
Amazing.
It's got LC 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're running vocals through it. I'm hitting these switches, and I'm really tripping out that that's like EQ. Like these components that you're talking about, running stuff through components. The sound is clean. I'm hearing all these differences, and it's way different than what I'm doing with plugins, and it's on the way in. So that's why I said earlier, I'm more and more gaining an appreciation for quality gear like what you're making and getting stuff coming good on the way in. I'm slowly but surely getting it.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot. You need to experiment with these, well, as you do with any bit of outboard equipment, really. It just you need to kind of work with it. It's quite seductive. These units, they'll seduce you into doing something that you wouldn't normally do, but if you come back to it the following day, you think, oh well, that's just way too much, so you back it off a little bit. So it's a bit it's a little bit like that. So you need to experiment with all, as you know, with all outboard gear.
Okay, let's see. Because I'm gonna raise one will win. Oh, over here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just putting up a quote because you were talking about the magic sound that comes out of the Fairchilds and all that, and it's just there's something about these units that creates this magic tone that it's just amazing. It's indescribable.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Charles, you just came back in. If you got a question, you got to speak up now because we're going to be ending pretty soon.
I'm learning a lot here, and let me use this to thank you and Simon for your time and explanation and invitation. Very much appreciated, man.
Simon, are there? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just responding to saying thank you.
Are there any studios out there that have it where you can run audio through these? Like I'd set up something where I'd make money running audio through. You send me some files, I'll run it back, and give you the files back and make some money off of just running files through. Are there any studios out there doing that, or anybody?
I don't know. I mean, I mean, I have a demo unit here in in the UK, and I have from time to time been asked to do that. I mean, there are some stems up on the website which are for the stereo unit, and there will be some for the mono unit quite soon, actually. So I'll be using the same stems that I use for the stereo for the mono, so that you can make comparisons between the two in terms of the way they sound. Because people do ask what the differences are, and unless you really hear them, it's a bit difficult to describe. But certainly the mono ones they're a bit well, I hesitate to use the word harsh because that's the wrong word, but there's more mid. There's more mid, there's more gain, and more presence. So there's more presence in the sort of mid band, mid range.
Okay. Yeah, I understood that it wasn't harsh when you said it, but yeah, you're right. You might want to put that out there. He said it was harsh. Yeah.
It's more it's where it would normally do that. It kind of does that. So sorry.
Okay. I'm out of questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, Simon.
Hello.
Yes, I've got this query for you concerning the power supply effectiveness on the mono unit. Would it be better for me if I'm using it on my mastering suite here if I use 2 mono as opposed to 1 stereo, just to have a bit more bass coming through? Or
yeah, it's a good. That's a very good question. If you had 2 separate units, you'd have 2 separate power supplies.
Yeah.
So the power supplies in the mono units are pretty much the same as they are in the stereo, but they're under less load. If that makes sense.
Yeah, the slew rate would be the recuperation rate from the extreme low to extreme high should be faster then, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
awesome. Thank you. I was wondering about that. Thanks.
Okay, Simon, I don't understand this question, so maybe you will. David Stedman was asking, he posts over here to the side, asking if you had any plans, future plans on getting involved with computer connections so that, for recallability. Does that make any sense to you? Do you know what he's talking about?
To have the controls. Do you mean having the controls motorized? Is that what you mean in some way, or?
Let me read it exact. It says, Simon, do you have any? My screen keeps switching. One sec. Wait, Stedman, are you here? Because you can ask him and have a conversation with him and okay. He must have stepped. Every time somebody leaves, my screen switches as I'm trying to read it. Simon, do you have any future plans of getting involved with computer connections for recalls and workability? That's all he typed. And if you don't get it, yeah, never mind.
Well, probably not. In terms of that, I mean, as close to recall as these units get, it's probably to do with having stepped AC threshold and all of these controls switched. But that's as close to recall these units will get. There won't be any interface.
Analog recall.
Analog recall.
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about, Stedman? Control sync, yes. Okay, yeah, that's what he's talking about. Okay.
Yeah, that's what these units have. Stepped AC threshold, stepped attenuators, everything on its step and switchable. So,
all right, there's a company out there, Ross Hogarth. He mentioned he spoke about it, where anybody that has, instead of taking screen pictures of the gear or logging it, there's a way to. There's a program that's actually made for that. That's a cool program. It has the pictures of the faceplate, huh?
T-Boy. It's called T-Boy, I think.
T-Boy?
Is it T-Boy?
I have no idea. Ross was showing us, and he was talking about how it saves time, and he loves it. Spell it for me.
T-E-A-B-O-Y. T-Boy.
T-Boy? Okay.
I think.
Yeah, that looks like it.
That's very good.
Recalls. Okay. TEABOYAUDIO.com. TBoyAudio.com.
That's it. Yeah. Very good. That's very good.
He was ranting and raving, saying how wonderful that was. I don't have that dilemma yet, where I need it, but he was saying, thumbs up to that big time.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to put out there for us before we head out?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Oh, well, just sort of continuation of production, really, and it's looking like it's going to be quite busy this year, which is really good. So I've got the production of these green units here, which is great. I've got some stereo ones at the back. I've got 2 mono ones, which are completed actually, which I can show you. So what I'll do is I'll bring this around here like that. Just turn you around. Okay. So this is. Oh God! Right. So you'll excuse me if I don't stand here for too long. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the back. There, and this is the front. I'll just get that here like that. So this is a mono unit. So these are completed units for a customer, which is great.
Right.
So yeah, just lots of production and spreading the message, I guess. That's the important thing.
Okay, so right now you have the AT-1,
which is the mono 660.
The AT-101,
which is the stereo.
670 stereo. Okay, and then you're going to have another product coming out sometime this year.
Yep, it's a little mic pre, and it's going to have these little tubes I showed you here, and it's going to have 2 of those in.
You're going to be showing this at NAMM or anything, AES?
I hopefully, I'm not sure yet. I want to try and do NAMM next year, because I've done lots of AESs, which are great and really, really good. But I've never done a NAMM show, so I'd like to do that.
You talking about the one in California?
I am. Yep, in Anaheim, is it?
Oh yeah. I hope you do come.
I'll be there.
That's my area. Yeah, I hope you do come.
Fantastic.
If you come next year, I'd love to interview you on the spot. Bring a little, camera recording thing, crew, whatever.
Fantastic. Yeah, great.
And ask you a couple of questions live on the spot, and then post that from NAMM. That would be awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I would like that very much. Thank you.
All right, we're done. Unless there's anything else anybody, you or anyone else would like to bring up.
No.
Joe Vassetti, thank you out there. He's one of our nerdy nerds and Pensado students, our Facebook group. And if I ever need something or don't understand it, I would turn to him. He's like you. He knows all this type of stuff.
Right.
Solid state weight is good. The heavier, the better. Thank you, Simon and Maud. Thank you. Oh, Stedman, high five, bro. Charles says, thanks for the invite and organizing the hangout. Much appreciated. Thank you, Simon, for your time and explanation. And he says, take care. And,
thank you.
Yep.
That's amazing. Thank you.
All
So
right.
if there's, I was going to say, if there's anything that I've not answered, or any questions that you think of that you haven't asked or haven't been able to ask on this platform tonight or today, you can email me. So you can email me at Simon at analoguetube.com, and you can just, if you've got any questions about the product, or you like to get involved in buying one or something, so just email me any questions, and I'll do my best to to help answer them.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
All right, bro. Thank you. This was great. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you doing this, bro. Really do.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And again,
Thank you.
Again, bro, you're now a part of history. This stuff that you're doing, you are a part of history. Period. I am very glad that you're doing it.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been great to be on your show.
Yeah.
And it's been great to get the message out.
All right, everybody. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Matt.
We're out.
Okay. Thank you.